In September of 2001, we traveled to Turkey, a land rich in ancient history, yet with modern cities and very friendly people. Our trip will see us exploring the western parts of this ancient land. We arrive in Istanbul, a city that straddles both the continents of Europe and Asia. It was once the western end of the Great Silk Route, the common point for all European traders entering and leaving China. Now it is the trade center through which all shipping traffic moves between the Mediterranean and Black Seas. In the evening of our arrival, we went to the rooftop of our hotel and photographed a few of the large illuminated buildings nearby. It's morning in Istanbul, and we prepare for our first day in Turkey. We set off. The first thing to see is the Hippodrome, which once was a great public arena created by the Roman Emperor Constantine. There are 3 large Roman-era monuments here. This is the obelisk of the pharaoh Thutmose, plundered from Egypt and erected in 390 AD. This column once had 3 snake heads taken from the temple of Apollo at Delphi. Lastly, the column of Constantine, erected in 940. Adjacent to the Hippodrome is the Blue Mosque, constructed between 1609 to 1616. When it was constructed, its 6 minarets nearly caused a major rift in the Muslim world, as it matched the Great Mosque in Mecca. Thus the Sultan was forced to pay for the construction of a 7th minaret at Mecca. Not far from the Blue Mosque is St. Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom. This is the last of the main Byzantine buildings still standing in Istanbul, and perhaps the most spectacular. Constructed in 536 AD, it's the 3rd church at this site. Leaving St. Sophia, we went underground to the Basilica Cistern. This 6th century storage chamber provided a reserve for the palace in the event of attack. There are 336 columns, mostly salvaged Roman artifacts, and some have very interesting bases. We moved on to the Grand Bazaar, a favorite calling point for tourists. Exiting the Grand Bazaar, we head north to the old Egyptian spice market. At least it's very colorful, but the prices were higher than at most of the street-side shops. From the spice market, we head back to the hotel for supper. Today we will drive down the Gallipoli Peninsula, the site of a World War I battle that lasted 9 months. The battle cost the lives of 160,000 Allied troops from Australia and New Zealand, as well as 86,000 Turks. Including those injured, the casualty count exceeded 500,000. Leaving that site, we will take a ferry to the mainland and stay overnight. We stopped for lunch at a small fishing village on the Sea of Marmara. We reached the memorial at the old battleground. This is the shoreline where the Allied troops landed. We board the ferry for the hop across to the mainland. Morning arrives at the ferry port. Today we shall leave the dock area and work our way down to the ancient city of Troy, and then on to another ancient city, Assos. Finally, we will spend the night at Berremkale, a small fishing village just below the Assos ruins. Anyone need a Trojan horse? We enter the ancient city of Troy through the south gates of Troy 6, dating from 1700 to 1250 BC. Troy had gone through many stages in its life, with new structures being built over old ones. Currently, they have identified 9 periods, with Troy 1 starting at 3000 BC and Troy 9 ending at 600 AD. This chart and the next slide show how the various periods of Troy lay over each other and their points in time. We leave Troy and head toward Assos. This is a 14th century Ottoman era bridge just on the edge of Assos. The ancient city was located at the top of a high hill, with this commanding view of the Aegean Sea below. We approach the ruins of the Temple of Athena, the daughter of Zeus, dating from 530 BC. Leaving the ruins, we wander back into town. A descent of 240 meters brings us to the shoreline and the tiny village of Bermramtail, where we will stay the night. As evening approaches, we watch the final rays of the sun strike the far side of the little bay. And from the same point, we watch the sun rising over the Aegean Sea the next morning. We leave the Assos area and drive towards the ancient city of Pergamon and the nearby town of Selçuk, where we will stay the night. The following day, we will visit what should be some of the best ruins in Turkey at the ancient city of Ephesus. And you thought gas prices here were high. How about paying over $1 million per liter? In the distant background, you can see the Acropolis of Pergamon on its lofty hilltop, which rises 300 meters above the surrounding area. We enter the Acropolis. This is all that remains of the great temple of Zeus, the main altar having been removed and carted off to a German museum many years ago. Like many Roman sites, there is always a theater, and the one at this site is spectacular, with seating for 10,000. At the highest point is the Temple of Trajan, dedicated to the deified Roman Emperor Trajan I. Returning to the lower lands below, we visit the second part of Pergamon, the Asclepion. This was the first full health retreat in history and dates from the early parts of the 2nd century AD. The Roman theater had 3,500 seats and was located just outside, but facing the main courtyard. We leave Pergamon and travel to the town of Selchuk, where our hotel awaits. Overlooking our hotel is this mysterious Crusade-era castle, to which public access is not permitted. These are the ruins of an early 1st century AD basilica. This structure was the Odeon, dating from the 2nd century AD. At various locations throughout the site, we saw these markings crudely carved into low horizontal surfaces. They mark spots where early Christians would meet. Polio fountain was constructed in the early part of the 1st century AD. This is a representation of Hercules. This fountain was constructed between 102 and 114 AD and dedicated to the Emperor Trajan. The state of preservation of these floor mosaics is amazing. The Temple of Hadrian was completed in the year 138 AD. We approach the most famous ruins at the site, the Great Celsus Library, which is believed to have been completed in 117 AD. These columns, located next to the library, were the marketplace, or agora. This market dates back to the 3rd century BC, with the columns dating to about 200 AD. final major structure we saw was the theater from the 5th century BC, although it was modified a number of times throughout its life. The circular seating area has a diameter of 154 meters. We leave the theater and head for the exit and back to the town of Selçuk. This column is all that remains of the great temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. To the rear of the column, one can again see the castle, as well as a very old mosque. We have lunch and take some time to wander about the local market. In town is an excellent museum containing many well-preserved artifacts from the Ephesus site. This is the Basilica of St. John, constructed in the 6th century A.D. St. John had lived the last days of his life in Ephesus, and after his death, Emperor Justinian had this monument constructed in his memory. We again get an excellent view of the Crusade-era castle, or fortress, from the basilica. Just below the basilica is the Isa Bey Camii, a mosque which dates from the 14th century. The next morning, we leave Ephesus and head to Pamukkale, where we will spend the night. From there, we will travel to Antalya, a somewhat touristy town in the Mediterranean Sea. Along the way, we stopped at Selda Lake and the ruins of Tremeso. Approaching Pamukkale, we see the White Mountain in the distance. Instead of exploring, maybe we should just relax at the hotel's pool. Just above the small town is the ruins of the ancient city of Hierapolis. This city was founded by Eumenes II of Pergamon and featured a health spa. It was leveled by an earthquake in 17 AD, but rebuilt and enjoyed great prosperity during the 2nd and 3rd centuries. And like any Roman city, a great theater was always present. The most significant feature of this site is the frozen waterfall, or perhaps it's a cotton castle. Whatever name you know it as, this cascade of white snow-like material was formed by deposits of calcium carbonate and other minerals in the water running down the falls. It's morning and time to leave. En route, we stop at Sept Lake. Small but picturesque, it has white shores due to the high calcium levels in the water. We reach the base of a mountain trail that leads to the ruins of Termeso. Its strong fortification and the rugged area permitted it to resist attack by Alexander the Great in 333 BC. The city is at an elevation of 1,700 meters and was known as the Eagle's Nest. Like most Roman cities, even here there was a great theater. Termeso, like other cities in the area, was destroyed by the great earthquake in 527 AD. Towards supper time, we near Antalya and take a look at it from a hilltop. Antalya is the hub of Turkey's Mediterranean coastal area. This rustic town of 1 million attracts up to 500,000 tourists during its 300-day-long summer season. During our stay here, we took a few hours to cruise out along the shoreline to the east of town. Returning to Antalya, we wander around the old part of town. From the restaurant where we had supper, we had a great view of the harbor at night. The next morning we leave Antalya and will travel to Konya for an overnight stay, then on to the Cappadocia region. Along the way we will briefly stop at Satahanai, like many travelers have done in the past. Konya was the 12th century capital of the Seljuk Empire. Now it's an unremarkable industrial city, except for being the home of the whirling dervishes. The Mevlana Takeshi, with its turquoise turret, is both a museum and the final resting place of Mevlana, who founded the sect in 1231 AD. The Sema, or whirling ceremony, is of great religious significance to the dervishes. These available light photos give some idea of what we saw. In the morning we head east, stopping at the Satahanai Caravansary. These fortified structures provided overnight protection to caravans traveling the Silk Route of China. By early afternoon, we had reached the edges of the Cappadocia area. Millions of years ago, the volcano Yasayas erupted in one of the greatest upheavals on the planet, smothering hundreds of kilometers of the surrounding area with a deep covering of lava. A few million years of erosion and civilization created the area's eerie, extraterrestrial-like landscape, with its amazing underground cities and strange rock formations. We first visited Kalmakli, one of the 400 known underground cities in the area. This maze of rooms, tunnels, and vertical tubes was dug into the soft lava, or tufa. We traveled to a depth of about 30 meters. However, the structure is known to go much deeper. We travel further into the Cappadocia area and begin to see the strange fairy chimneys. We arrive at our hotel and prepare for the next day's adventure. We head out on foot to explore the wild landscape. The tufa rock has some magic-like qualities. The material is very soft when dug into. However, after being exposed to the air, the material hardens, making it almost perfect for constructing cave homes. Fans of the recent Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace, may recognize this off-world landscape as the planet where young Skywalker lived with his mother in a cave house and did pod racing. That part of the movie was filmed on location not far from here. We walked towards a city that was carved into a canyon's walls. A massive section of the stone wall fell in 1996, at which time the city was abandoned for safety reasons. There are many small churches like this hidden in these cave structures, as this part of Turkey was a perfect spot for early Christians to live. We are about to enter this structure to explore it. Our guide, whose family lived in these caves for many years, helped some of our group down from floor to floor. There are no stairs. Returning to our hotel, we take a look next door. We are not used to seeing chimneys coming out of the ground. The town of Avanes is famous for its pottery, produced from its unique local clays. This monument celebrates this fact. Remember that place next to our hotel with the chimneys coming out of the ground? Well, this is what's under it, a large room and 8 seating dining areas. A bit of a tourist thing. They provide a dinner show of ethnic dancing. And of course, no show is complete without a Turkish belly dancer. We take a final farewell look at the Sofa Hotel before heading off. We leave Cappadocia and drive to Ankara, the capital city of Turkey. Along the way, we will be stopping to look at a large salt flat. Spending only a few hours in Ankara, we will travel by overnight train back to Istanbul. Much like the salt flats in the U.S., Tuzgolu during the summer is a dry lake of almost solid salt, which one can walk out on. While in Ankara, we visited the mausoleum of Kemal Atatürk, the founder of modern-day Turkey. On our return to Istanbul, we spent a good part of the day exploring the Topkapi Palace, which is located next to St. Sophia, which we had visited at the beginning of the trip. These tall stacks are vents and smokestacks for the palace's massive kitchen. The Topkapi Palace was the nerve center of the Ottoman Empire, starting in the mid-15th century until a new palace was constructed in the mid-19th century, a bit further north on the Bosphorus. At one time, over 50,000 people lived and worked on the palace grounds. We exit the palace and head off for some shopping. Our final day in Istanbul will be highlighted by a cruise north on the Bosphorus to the edge of the Black Sea. This is the 19th century Dolmabahce Palace. Some of the longest suspension bridges in the world are located here, spanning Europe on the west and Asia on the east. This one is 1.074 kilometers in length. The dark gray structure is the fortress of Rumeli Hisar, located on the European side. A similar fortress on the Asian side marked the gates to the Black Sea. We dock at Anadolu Kavaji, a small fishing settlement attached to a military base. Approaching the military base. It appears tourists are not welcome. A view of the Black Sea. We return to dockside for lunch. Leaving the dock, the boat heads back to Istanbul. In our final few hours before leaving Turkey, we took one last look at the Blue Mosque and St. Sophia. Our trip is over. We leave Turkey with many warm memories of the friendly people and the wealth of history, a small bit of which we were privileged to see.